Week 5 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few defense DST units I have as sleepers this week. The first one, the New York Giants. So the Giants, I like them as a streaming option this week. They're out there in 90% of fantasy leagues, and this is a good matchup at the New Orleans Saints that give up the 8th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So the last couple weeks versus good offenses, you didn't expect much, obviously, from this defense. Week 3 versus Kansas City, 22 points allowed, 2 sacks. And then week 4, in an upset victory over the Chargers, 18 points allowed, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. I think they could get pressure on Spencer Rattler a decent amount in this ball game. I think they could create a turnover or 2 as well. But even though this Saint team, they still got players that could go out there and make plays. Chris Olave, obviously, Rashid Shaheed, Jawan Johnson, he's been solid at the tight end position so far this season. And Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. But I still think New York, they could get the pass rush on Rattler, led by Thibodeau. Abdul Carter starting to come in his own a little bit as well, and also Burns. So I think this week there'll be a fine sleeper option available in 90% of leagues. Next DST staying in the same game is the New Orleans Saints. So this Giant offense, they give up the 10th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. New Orleans out there in 95% of fantasy leagues. And I thought last week for the first half of the game, they held their own versus that Buffalo Bill offense, but the final line was 31 points, 3 sacks, and interception in that one. So like I said, the New York Giants, 10th most fantasy points to defenses on the season. And we know Jackson Dart looked good in his first career start, but he still is a rookie. And then we'll see how Jackson Dart handles his first career start on the road, where it's a different animal than at home. So like I said, New Orleans, obviously one of the worst teams in the league going for. Defense isn't great, but if you need a sleeper, and like I said, they got a decent matchup this week here. The Saints DST is a sleeper, and the final DST is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Buccaneers, they're available in 90% of fantasy leagues. I know they go to the 12th man in Seattle, and the Seattle offense playing pretty well, where they got good players. Sam Darnold, quarterbacks look decent so far this year. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet out of the backfield, and Cooper Kupp at times still has something left. But this week, I think Tampa Bay, they know they got to play better on defense, where the last couple weeks, it's been up and down for them. Week 3 versus the Jets, 21 points allowed, 4 sacks, interception, fumble recovery, touchdown in that one. And in week 4 versus the high-powered Eagles offense, 31 points allowed, 2 sacks and a safety. So this week at Seattle, I know Seattle's offense has been solid, and they don't give up a lot of fantasy points to defenses on the year. But I think Tampa Bay, if they're coming off a tough floor, got to go out there on the road, set the tone defensively. And also, we know Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded coach, where he was a defensive coordinator many seasons before that. He was the Jets head coach, and then again the Bucs defensive coordinator before he got the job. So this week at Seattle, if you're in a pinch for a DST, I think Tampa Bay could be a sleeper option this week. So that's a few defense DST units I have as sleepers for week 5 of the fantasy football season.